Hey there, it's Imran and you're watching Imran Plus. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Miss Marvel Episode 4, Seeing Red. If you haven't seen this episode yet, go ahead and pause this video, watch the episode on Disney Plus right now, and then come back because this video will contain spoilers. Also, real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can help this channel grow and so you don't miss any upcoming videos. All right, let's get started. Now, I think the tone and style of this episode is set really well in the first few minutes with the previously on title slide being in Urdu. I think that really captures the vibe of this show and the tone, and I really appreciated that because I think the opening sequences of all of these episodes has been really good. So we start off the episode with Kamala and her mom on the plane to Pakistan. Now I thought it was super funny that they didn't get seats next to each other, so they had this random guy sitting in between them who kind of starts to have a conversation with Kamala, but then is clearly the kebab mein haddi, as is commonly said, between Kamala and her mom. And if you've ever seen Crazy Rich Asians, then you know that scene when the main characters arrive in Singapore and greeted with their friends. This episode reminded me of that scene because, again, if you've ever flown back home, you're always greeted with your family and your friends, and they always have like a bunch of stuff for you right outside of the airport. And that is just the case here. Kamala and her mom are greeted by her grandmother and her cousins who bring flowers and necklaces, and you're greeted with so much life and festivity, even if you arrive in the middle of the night, as Kamala and her mom do. So I really like that. It's just so accurate and really fun to watch. By the way, in this scene, there's actually a line that's mistranslated in the captions. Kamala tells her grandmother that she likes her churis, not jewelries, because churi is the Urdu word for bangle, and so she's appreciating her bangles, which is a good line because Kamala has one of her own special bangles. Then we're driving through the streets of Karachi, and director Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy does what she does best as an Academy Award and Emmy-winning director. That is show us the life and heart of Karachi. We explore the city, and I think she does a wonderful job. I think any diaspora person, particularly any person from Pakistan, will really appreciate this sequence. And thank God there is no dirty yellow filter over any scene in this episode. Hollywood does that a lot with any non-Western country. There's always this yellow filter making it seem like it's so dirty and poor. And luckily that is not the case here. I'm so glad, and hopefully that ends. And so Kamala gets a chance to talk with her Nani, aka grandmother, about what's going on and why she decided to bring her here. And in addition to that, we get our first look at Fawad Khan's character, who plays Kamala's great-grandfather, Hassan. So I'm really excited to see him in the next episode, where I think Kamala's probably going to meet both of her great-grandparents. We'll talk a little bit more about the exposition and the jinn-related stuff when we talk about Red Daggers and Waleed in a minute. But I want to talk about a quieter moment between Kamala and her Nani, which is when her Nani tells her that it's important to find beauty in the pieces. And I thought that was such a beautiful line because it reflects how the South Asian diaspora has continued to celebrate their culture and find beauty in themselves and their culture despite having their reality shattered by the partition. I really like that, and I feel like the writing in the show, especially this episode, is always really good. Now, what Desi kid hasn't experienced their parents or their mom telling them to wake up, stop sleeping so much, and get around and do something. And Kamala is no different. I also really appreciate anytime anyone speaks Urdu in this show, especially in this episode. To be honest, I would have liked more Urdu, especially while they're in Pakistan, because they're literally in Pakistan, so people should be speaking Urdu all the time, especially with the elders. Like, grandparents and stuff typically speak in Urdu most of the time, and so I would have liked to see more of that, but I like what we get, and I appreciate any time we hear it. Except when Kareem speaks in Urdu, because even though he does a good job with his Pakistani accent, his Urdu sounds like when I speak in Urdu, and that shouldn't be the case for someone who was born and raised in Pakistan, presumably. So other than that, I think the Urdu is pretty good in this show. And apparently Kamala finds Pani Puri spicy. How? I don't get that. Come on, Kamala, you can do better than that. But another really cool aspect that you might have missed is that when Kamala and her family go to the restaurant, the boating restaurant, there's a song that's played over it. It's called Pasuri, and if you're not familiar with it, this is actually a really popular song at the moment. It has over 200 million views on YouTube, is one of the most played songs on Spotify India, and is actually from Coke Studio, which is a huge thing for Pakistanis and South Asians. Like, If you're Desi, you definitely have heard of Coke Studio, and you probably are a fan too. But this song came from Coke Studio, from Ali Sethi and Shay Gill, who performed this song, and it's a really popular track, but it has Punjabi lyrics and it has a modern twist on some traditional rhythms. I thought it was really cool for this show to include a more recent popular pop culture reference from Pakistan. Some classic references in this episode, we have Mera Long Gawacha by Musrat Nazir, and we also have Disco Diwane by Nazia Hassan. I know my pronunciation could use some improvement, apologize for that, but I thought those were really good classic songs that were referenced. And then we also get to hear up and coming Pakistani artists like Abid Broi and Somewhat Super in the Sibi song, which is another popular song that's played when Kamala is exploring the streets of Karachi. Now, speaking of the streets of Karachi, I thought it was hilarious when Kamala tried to bargain with the shopkeepers. Her line of like 300 was so funny because any person who can't really speak Urdu or Hindi can relate to that, because you want to engage in the conversation, but you can't help bringing in English words. I thought that was so good. And her trying to bargain was also really funny because we kind of reference back to her and her mom shopping in the previous episode. I don't know why Kamala is trying to buy things on her own, because anybody who has ever gone back to the homeland knows you do not buy your own things. You have the locals, your relatives, buy things for you and bargain for you, because they know how to do it. They're from there, they speak the language, because as a foreigner, you stick out like a sore thumb. And if you try to get things on your own, you 100% are going to be ripped off. And that is exactly what's happening to Kamala. She paid 1,500 rupees for a photo. I can't believe she did that. She literally got scammed by the photo booth guy. And then she just handed over her cash for poor directions, which, by the way, were super accurate too, because any Desi uncle you ask for directions is going to give you directions like that. Like, go here, turn left there, and then you're going to see something and turn right and go back around. That's super accurate. Very, very funny. But I can't believe her cousins just left her alone as a foreigner in the middle of a marketplace. Like, that is so dangerous, but also unwise, because you're going to lose all your money. Ridiculous. Crazy. Speaking of some more small details, we get another Ant-Man reference in this episode. I think there's been an Ant-Man reference in almost every single episode of this show. Is Ant-Man gonna show up at the end of this? That would be super funny for a show about Miss Marvel, Kamala, who is such a big Captain Marvel fan, and then having Ant-Man be a cameo in this. Honestly, that'd be hilarious, and they should do it. They've been building up to it. By the way, cool Easter egg in this sequence, when Kamala says, "How do you know I'm not Canadian?" is a reference to the actress Iman Vellani being Canadian herself, which is also a really cool fact, because Iman Vellani and Hayden Christensen actually went to the same school and had the same drama teacher. So I thought that was really cool for them to include that. As for the Red Dagger, I think he looks super cool. In my opinion, he has one of the best MCU costumes, or at least adaptations of the comic book costume, because it's super simple and not over stylized or over designed, and I think that is a breath of fresh air in the MCU. It just goes to show that keeping it simple goes a long way, and I think the MCU could learn that for some of their costumes going forward. Aramis Knight as the Red Dagger, aka Kareem, also does a really nice job. I appreciated him having a Pakistani accent, and he does a good job with it too. Even though it's not 100% consistent, I think he did a pretty good job. It is ironic though, I will say, because he makes some comments about Americans whitewashing things when they're eating the Chinese food. And it's just funny because the actor himself is half white and he's playing a Pakistani vigilante. So that was a little bit hypocritical coming from Marvel, but whatever. I mean, those are some problems that people have had with Miss Marvel in the past with the hashtag fix Miss Marvel. It's something that I address in my own trailer breakdown. Now, speaking of my trailer breakdown, I was right when I told you that there would be numerous Red Daggers, and that when I theorized that Farhan Akhtar was one of them. I'm so happy to see that is the case. Turns out that the Red Daggers protect the community from otherworldly threats like the Clandestine, who have presumably been looking for the bangle for a while, and probably have had run-ins with the Red Daggers in the past. So I thought that was cool. By the way, how cool does Kamala look with her new outfit given to her by Waleed? I thought that she and the Red Dagger look so awesome in this particular shot, and I think it's a really cool foreshadow to her final costume, which she'll probably get at the end of the season. but also a callback to the simplicity of her comic book costume. And again, simplicity goes a long way. So anyway, the Red Dagger takes Kamala to meet Walid, who is played by the one and only Farhan Akhtar, which is so cool. He looks really cool. I love his outfit. He fights really cool. He has cool action scenes, and his overall performance is just really great. I'm a big fan of Farhan Akhtar. For those of you who don't know, he is a big Bollywood actor and writer and director as well. He made Dawn and Dawn 2, which coincidentally are Shah Rukh Khan projects. So that's a really cool reference there too from the previous episode. But him being in the MCU is such a big deal. I can't believe it's not more of a big deal that Farhan Akhtar is in the MCU. But I was so sad when he died. Like, come on, we have Farhan Akhtar in the MCU and we're gonna kill him in the same episode he's introduced. Like, we're spending two episodes in Pakistan. He could have been in the second one a little bit too. Walid explains that the Clandestine aren't the jinn that we know from religious texts and from stories, which I was so relieved to hear. And as many of you have been saying from the start, I hear you. Yes, you're right. Well, for some of us, I wasn't sure. Okay, I was a little bit nervous based on what I heard before the show and what I had heard from when the show was being aired. But I'm very glad they made that distinction, that they are not the same jinn. And maybe some of your theories are right, that they might be a version of the Inhumans. To me, this whole different dimension being connected to our world sounds very similar to Ta Lo from Shang-Chi, as I mentioned before. That's really interesting to me because we have multiverses and now different dimensions. So I wonder if the MCU is going to play off on that and if we're going to see different types of dimensions in future projects. So I'm interested to see how this plays out and if it connects to Shang-Chi in any way. The Clandestine dimension is separated from the real world with a Noor barrier. And the visual that we get for the Noor dimension seems very similar to the Inhuman city of Adelan. And maybe as some of you have theorized, the MCU might have repurposed the Inhumans as the Clandestine, and perhaps Adelan is this Noor dimension. They did say that genetics are a big part of Kamala's powers, which is very similar to the way Inhumans work. It's a genetic component that's activated by Terrigen Mist. And then with Kamala, seems to be genetic powers that are activated by the bracelet. I could see some sort of connection happening here. Another cool little Easter egg, we got to look at the Department of Damage Control, the Supermax prison, which is going to be featured pretty heavily in the upcoming She-Hulk. So I love that sneak peek. So back to Karachi. Kamala and Nani, her grandmother, who by the way is played by Samina Ahmed, who is a really big Pakistani actress in Pakistani TV dramas. So you might have recognized her from there, and if not, now you know she's actually a really big deal. A lot of the cast in this show are really big deals, and I feel like that should be recognized more. While they're having this conversation, I also really appreciated hearing the adhan or the call to prayer from the masjid in the background. That is a very common thing to hear in Muslim communities all around the world, but particularly in South Asian countries and Muslim dominant countries. So I appreciate this show highlighting those aspects as positives. So then later in the episode, Kamala hangs out with Kareem and his friends who have nicknames for each other, and Kareem's is Keema, which sounds like keema, which is a minced meat dish. And so that's why Kamala says your name is minced meat. That was a really cool reference that you might not have picked up on. But also they're eating biryani out of the bag, which is the best type of biryani. If you haven't eaten biryani out of a bag, you're missing out, because that is authentic biryani. And everyone eating it around the campfire is a nice moment for Kamala, because she is kind of connecting with her culture and appreciating more. And I thought that was a really sweet moment. Along with reconnecting with culture and your roots, this episode also showcases and grapples with generational trauma and the way that generational trauma is both a cause and an effect. Kamala's grandmother and her mother, Muniba, have a heart-to-heart conversation about why Muniba left and felt that she had to emigrate to America in the first place, and how she felt that her mother's actions affected her and her decision to. And despite Muniba leaving her family and moving to America, her mother, Nani, still buys toffee boxes in the hope that one day her daughter would return. And then Muniba also brings up this suggestion of Sana, the grandmother, moving to America in order to live with a family, which is actually very common for South Asian families to do. Often children have to move away from their parents by necessity in order for better opportunities, while their parents remain behind because they're tied to the people and the land and the history that they have there. And then later in life, once the children have settled down in a different country and have families of their own, they bring their parents to come live with them. And that's a very, very common experience for many people. So I liked the show touching on that a little bit. Zenobia Shroff as Muniba is doing an exceptional job and quite frankly deserves an award for her acting in the show. And the last shot of this episode is showing just how horrific the partition was, with the last possible train leaving being so crowded and packed, was very moving and surprising coming from Marvel. I didn't think that they would go this far. Episode 5 strikes again. We have another emotional episode. We had that in WandaVision, we had that in Moon Knight, and we're gonna have it here too. I've included a link in the description box of this video to the 1947 Partition Archive, which is a community-based crowdsourced archive of real stories and experiences from the partition. And I encourage you to check it out below. So what did you think? What did you think of this episode? Did you like all of these smaller moments, these quiet references? You know, did you like the jokes? And what do you think about the story elements that we got? About the clandestine, about this alternate dimension, about Aisha and Kamala's grandparents? Let me know, what are your thoughts and theories for the next episode? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great time. Lots more videos coming soon, but in the meantime, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and fellow movie enthusiasts. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.